Welcome back to Get With The Programming. I'm Chase Ingram.
I'm Captain America.
And along with me is Bill Grundler.
Wolverine.
Sorry, Joshua and Haley, you got to come back a second time before you get a sound clip. That's just how it goes.
Dude, that intro has evolved over time, man.
Oh, you were head banging in the back. I saw that.
Oh, you can see that part? Right.
I wonder if they can see this.
Yeah.
I can see everything that's happening on the left side of the screen for everybody. Perfect. So, but I appreciate the that was it. You seemed like you enjoyed that. So.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, we're trying to improve as we've been going 4 years now.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
That's so crazy.
We watch the show regularly. We love hearing you guys' takes.
Really? Oh, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I see you in the chat. So
yeah.
Why don't you argue with us in the chat?
Ooh,
Oh, you know, we don't want to rock the boat.
Exactly.
You know,
do you know who's in our chat? Like, come on now. Like,
yeah, you guys got plenty of people.
If it's gonna rock the boat, we just won't answer you. We just won't bring you up. That's all. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
There's some comments I'll see pop up. I'm like, not going to address that one.
Right.
Well, listen, guys, thanks for hopping on. We're going to talk the comeback that was Haley Adams that you guys were orchestrating from a coaching side, from a training partner side, from just a mentorship side, which I thought was fantastic. And we're not going to get into too much of the details of that process because Andrew Hiller made a amazing video. It was 48 hours with Haley Adams. I watched it again today just because I could watch that over and over. And it was just incredible that really the access you guys gave him and the welcoming. And honestly, just not knowing Haley, but knowing Haley enough to where I was so shocked that she let that guard down and let him in. But that was amazing.
it was cool.
We had run into Hiller at Crash, and got to know him there, and he seemed very dedicated and
different in person, isn't he?
Yeah, no,
I was just gonna ask that. Yeah, what the two characters seem like?
Honestly, like Haley, what are your first thoughts?
I don't know. I think for us, like we're able to remove like the YouTube Hiller versus the person, right? And we're really able to just kind of like get to know someone when we meet them. And I feel like, I don't know, I knew about him for a while because he actually trained under a good friend of ours or with him, Vespa.
Michael Vespa. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of like knew of him. Like he had gone to regionals. I remember he did really good at like Strict Nate. So like I don't know. For me, I kind of just was like, oh, another athlete, So I feel like we're able to kind of like break those two apart pretty well.
Yeah, and the one thing that struck me about Hiller was that he works incredibly hard, and when we first heard that he was interested in doing the doc, we were kind of talking about it, and we were like, it's not in Hiller's best interest to come and make everyone look bad. And knowing how hard he works and like how devoted he seemed to coming in and doing a really good job, I think everybody just was like, okay, we're gonna bet on this, and we think it's gonna pay off. And man, did he come through! I mean,
I think by far, I think that's one of the most amazing videos that he's done. Where talk about it at a perfect time for him because everybody was hating on him, and then that came out, and it's like, man, he's really okay. He's really a nice guy. Look at all that.
For sure.
Yeah, we were pretty impressed with that. Like he had sent it to us before he released it. And we were like, this is good. This is like, and being in the film and TV world, I mean, we were just like, wow, you did a great job telling.
Yeah, you guys know better than we would.
Right.
As far as
the thing that's really good that he did very well is that a lot of times when you watch a sports documentary or like a vlog, like a training vlog or anything like that, there's a difference between just having shots put together in chronological order and trying to tell a story. There's like a through line, and Hiller found the through line and kept touching back on it as it went. And there was a progression throughout the entire thing. So it felt like you were kind of going somewhere from start to finish.
I thought the most incredible piece of content he made outside of that documentary was the promo cut he had, right? There's one thing to get an hour in time and content, but in 30 seconds, I felt like he encapsulated really the raw emotion of what was to come for that video in his little like promo reel. That was absolutely like, that hit me hard. And I was like, I was not expecting this on a Taylor. Come up, and I was like, oh, who's he talking shit about now? I was like, oh no, this is a Haley promo. And it was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So big thanks to Hiller.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. But all right, we want to talk about Haley. Haley Adams is back, and not only is she back, she is what it looks like back in a big way, better than ever. But in not necessarily, yes, she performed great and better than ever physically, but like just it looks like the best Haley Adams we've ever seen, just top to bottom, as far as just like athletes concerned, a human's concerned. And I attribute that just from what I've seen from the outside in is the relationships that you guys have provided her top to bottom and going forward. And what I'd love to pick your brains on today, and Joshua, this is the idea from you, is we're going to go back to semifinals and work our way event by event, pre-semis and a little post recap, if you guys are cool with that. And the process you guys go with, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, touching on a little bit about what you were saying earlier, kind of the lead up to semis, you talk about X factors and things that really move the needle. I think it's really important for me to take the time to highlight Haley, because Haley made a move out to spend time with Haley Adams in January. And I think that level of support really showed like, hey, we're all in, we're doing this, we're in this with you. Whatever you need from us, you just say it, And Haley, you want to talk a little bit about like just kind of the move and
well, not just you, right? Well, it wasn't you were not by yourself.
No, I was not by myself. So we started working with her before January, but we had talked about it, and for us, like we've done a lot of cool things, and like anything, like when you go all in, you see a lot more just kind of like it pays off, right? Like when you go all in. And so with this, the only thing we were kind of missing was that in-person relationship. And so I made the move from Los Angeles to Blacksburg, and we were training at 460 Fitness, which is where I actually got to train during COVID, leading into like West Coast Classic like a few years ago. And so I got to really know the owner, Velvet. She opened her gym to me and trained with me every single day. And so for me, like I knew this was a great place to be. And so anyways, I met Haley in Virginia with our baby. And Josh was actually back and forth between Virginia and Atlanta for work. He was working on a film. So for me,
I would say the film name. I heard you drop it like really quietly on the. Was it the Avatar?
Oh, that was another
I've worked on Avatar in the past. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was working on. I was working on a Marvel movie recently.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Dang. Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Did you not see our intro show? Did you not see the intro to the entire show?
Time out. So we will derail while we're on Marvel right now. I've always thought it was cool that you guys had those drops at the beginning of the show because of things like that. But also, I'm not sure if you're aware, Haley and I used to be part of a touring stunt show from 2015 to 2017, something like that.
Okay, I knew you guys were stunt.
So it was called Marvel Universe Live, and
y'all were on that.
Yeah. So she did.
Wait! No. Can we guess?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sure. Were you characters?
Yeah. Well.
Yes. Mostly we were bad guys.
Stunt people for the characters.
We also played some characters in the show.
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
All right, so you can guess. Go for it,
Bill. Did you have the same facial hair?
Did it what?
Josh, I didn't have the same facial hair.
I was like, you got some Tony Stark vibes. You got some Tony Stark vibes going on with the.
Oh yeah, you kind of.
Oh, I kind of do. Yeah.
That's not it.
Just saying.
Like main people are kind of like just sort of off.
No, we played some main people.
Oh,
damn. Hawkeye?
No.
I was gonna say like Gambit.
No,
That's a good
maybe
guess.
not.
Gambit wasn't part of that show, but
Yeah, it was more that. It was
all
more
right.
Avengers.
Any guesses for Haley?
I mean, you're limited. So you're either Agent 13 or you're Black Widow.
Black
So-
Widow.
No. Okay. So
Forgotten one.
yeah. So do you want to say who you played?
Yeah, Captain Marvel.
Oh, dang.
shit!
Okay.
That's, of course.
All right.
Dang, that's a good
Blonde
one.
hair,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she played Captain Marvel, and it's funny because, I mean, we worked with lots of great performers and all that stuff, and they all looked heroic. So there's a couple people that would rotate who was playing that role just to save everybody's bodies because we played so many shows
Oh, interesting.
in so many different cities and everything like that. And when Haley got in there, her being an elite CrossFit athlete, it was like she's wearing the same suit, but her arms were just like bursting the seams. But yeah, you definitely looked the most like a superhero. I would say.
That's awesome.
I can see
Oh,
that.
gosh.
I can see that. That's awesome.
What about
For
you?
sure.
What about you?
I played the Incredible Hulk actually.
No way. That's awesome.
So I was in this 10-foot tall animatronic suit. I was on power skips, which are like jumping stilts.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would be on that. The whole top half weighed a ton. I was in a harness, and yeah, I think the whole thing, including me, was over 400 pounds.
No
And,
way.
yeah, so I would have to sit in the, what was it called? Not the hex, but it was a set piece, right?
It's like a set piece. Yeah. I'm
So
not sure what
I
it's
had to
called.
sit in the set piece with the curtain closed before the finale, right? And I would get in there in the suit, so I'm strapped in there. So if I had claustrophobia, it would have been over, So and I had to sit in there for like 25 minutes at a time.
Oh, how was it
And
hot?
during the big finale, like Loki's about to destroy all the heroes, and then
Spoiler
Iron Man's
alert.
like, we could just get a little help, and Bruce Banner runs in and they start beating the crap out of him, and then the curtain opens and I step out and come on as the Hulk,
Dang.
and the lights are going, the bombs are going off, everything like that, and then I would go and beat the shit out of Loki, beat the crap out of Loki.
It's CrossFit, dude. You're all right. You're fine.
But yeah, so that was my role. I
Wow.
absolutely loved it, and
Dang.
Dude, I wish we would have known ahead of time. We could have pulled up some video. Of
I
that.
know.
Oh,
and-
dude,
you know what?
I'm just
Next
saying,
time
so-
now you have to come back.
yeah.
I'll take care of the sound clips.
Captain Marvel.
Haley,
And the
fun
Hulk
fact,
right
actually, Haley, so she flew around on wires a bunch. We did a bunch of fights and falls and all that stuff as bad guys, and we played bad guys during other parts of the show.
Okay.
But she would do fights and falls. But she also flew around on wires as Captain Marvel, and she got her first fire burn on Marvel Universe Live, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yep.
then-
First vibrant. It was great.
And then that actually landed her another gig when we got back to LA. And you have like what, 500 fire burns,
Yeah,
something
a
like that.
lot.
She's been on fire a lot. So yeah.
Dang.
It's a pretty cool little
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So anyway, that was Marvel Universe
Yeah.
Live, and one of the coolest parts about that show was I was on it when it first started, and when we first started, I remember playing in South Carolina, and there was nobody in the stands. It was like empty,
Oh.
And I remember reading the script at one point, and the script said, okay, at this point, this is when Iron Man raises up his thing, and then Bluetooth will go out to the people in the audience, and their toys that they just bought will all start blinking. And I'm like sitting out there, I'm like not seeing anything out in the crowd. So when a couple years later, when she was on the show, we were playing in Europe, and I remember we played the O2, and I think the next week Justin Bieber was going to be there, and we sold out every night that we were there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Friday night was 100% packed. And it was this really weird, like full circle moment where, it's time for me to come out as the Hulk. I come out, you hear this massive roar of the crowd, and I just see these blinking lights everywhere. And I was like, holy crap, we did it. Like, this is insane, So definitely a memory I'll never forget.
That's
But,
so
yeah.
cool.
That's so cool.
Very cool.
Oh
And then
my
Haley,
God.
one more thing. This is even cooler than all that. But you qualified for the CrossFit Games for the Masters.
Or yeah.
Yes,
So
you
I
The byproduct of
qualified.
training with Haley Adams is it just makes you fitter.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much does, right? If you train with her, you have no choice.
Yeah.
Like, right? You're-
You must be fitter.
yeah, it's just kind of like, and it's one of those things too where it's like, when I was pregnant, I actually started training with Bethany Flores, and then I did open and quarterfinals with her, and so another like with that, like she kind of kept me going.
Yeah.
And then here we are with Hayley, and kind of the same thing, right? It's a hard thing to come back to after having a baby. Like, and I'm 37, so it's not like, I can just do the
It doesn't
thing.
all just snap back in place like you're 24.
Yeah,
Right?
and I feel like I'm still pretty fit, but yeah, it's not easy. And a lot of this sport is like your mind, right? And so having done a lot of things, it's kind of like you're like, I used to be able to do this. I used to feel like this. Or why is this hard? Why can't I lift this weight? And so, I think it's just funny kind of how life happens sometimes and how certain people get placed in your life at certain points. Because it's like, yeah, maybe they needed me, but I also needed them. Right. And so I think just having like, surrounding yourself with the right people at the right time, like does a lot for you, and it goes both ways.
All those pains will just become background noise, just so you know, talking old person to almost old person. So just so you know,
they don't go away.
It doesn't go away. Just so you just don't feel it anymore. It's like that's just normal. I just don't feel anything anymore.
Like it's like one big thing, and then it just changes.
That's the mystery ankle pain. You're walking, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, my ankle.
Oh,
we're better. We're better. Okay.
Now it's in my right knee.
I find that I wake up more in the morning and I'm just like, what happened? Like, I don't even remember why that would hurt, Like, so anyway.
That's the best game is like, what's going to hurt today? We're number one.
Yeah. So we're super excited. Like, obviously we have Haley Adams competing at the CrossFit Games, and then a couple weeks later going down to Alabama, and we're going to watch her throw down. And it's going to be a great month. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun.
Leading into, so as we like shift it back to Haley Adams, is the events were, I like to call them re-leaked, right? It's not necessarily they were leaked early or they were released, they were just re-leaked, right? We'll just say that. But it's, thanks, Eden. Happy 4th of July. Yes, happy 4th of July Eve. Make sure you leave your milk and cookies out for Captain America tonight.
Happy 4th, guys.
Yeah. They get released early. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
What was y'all's first did you sit down with Hayley and it's like, hey, here they're out. You can look if you want to. Like, what's that conversation? How do you guys set that up? Because usually, if it's myself, I'm like, it's like the scene from The Office where it's like, don't panic, and then everybody just like scatterbrains everywhere. How does that process start?
Well, we definitely talked with her, but I mean, right, like we've been doing this for a long time, and like I couldn't believe how early we were getting this.
Yeah.
Right. And
Same.
so I'm like, right, like I was just kind of like, wow, we have a lot of time, right? And now we don't have to do all these.
And you guys are the last week to go too. So
exactly. Yeah.
So
awful.
That was one of those things where it was like, okay, we have these workouts, but we have so much time. So right, we like, I mean, you can take over.
Yeah. So
kind of on that,
first initial reaction, Haley saw the stuff and was like, okay, cool. Like these are workouts she could wrap her head around. Nothing seemed too crazy or new or anything like that.
What I will say is with this programming, it was just traditional CrossFit.
It was CrossFit,
It's just kind of like
so great,
right?
Yeah.
So when we saw it initially, I was like, oh, I love this, and obviously there's going to be things where you're like, okay, that might not be it, my best one or whatever. But like as an entire weekend of tests, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess first things first, like when we first saw him, I always tend to work backwards and just be like, okay, so progressions, right? Like how much time do we have? How many times a week can we hit variations of this? What does it make sense to do? So that way, and that's the other thing too, is that we have to manage, not getting sick of doing the same thing over and over and over, right? So, like when's the right moments to pepper other stuff in? So that way it's still fun and everybody, you're still happy about it and excited to come back to the gym. So that was really the trick, was being like, okay, given that we have so much time, we can put a ton of work into these. However, like what's that balancing point?
It's a blessing and a curse, I feel like, because everyone's like, would you rather go week 1? Would you rather go week 3? Are the events going to get released 3 weeks before week 1? How's that's going to navigate? And
and
all those things you have to work with.
I bet if you asked any other athlete that was competing there, or most athletes, I would say that was competing there, they're probably all sick of doing that stuff too.
Yeah, we've actually talked to a few that,
and
like it's funny because, as we got closer, it was like we started having to like kind of pepper in some other stuff that had nothing to do with those specific tests, just to kind of like keep her mind good,
Yeah.
like, because like when you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you don't want to be there anymore, right? And the anxiety, like, right,
Sure.
getting to semifinals, right? I would argue that that's probably the most stressful weekend for a lot of these athletes, right? Because there's only so many spots, and if you don't make it, that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
And, we saw a number of athletes that have been to the games multiple times that didn't, crack the egg this year. And I think for us, knowing that it was, Hayley coming back after a year off, we knew this was kind of a huge litmus test of being like, okay, where are we at? That kind of thing. So for us, obviously our main goal was to get to the CrossFit Games, right? But underlying all that was making sure that we stayed true to our original mission, being we want you to walk out there happy, we want you to enjoy this and have a good time. And so at the same time we want to qualify, it was also like, okay, we want to make sure she's set up for success for the games too, without being too presumptive and thinking like, oh, she's a shoo-in, right? So, Hayley and I had talked about it, and we talked about it as a group about just like, this region is stacked, dude. Like there are a lot.
One. Everybody's familiar with them because they've had so much time to prep and practice. So
yeah. And I mean, you can talk a little bit about this, about not underestimating the field,
Yeah, right. Like I think a lot of times, like, people are like, oh, shoe in, that person's in, that person's in. Oh, okay. So really there's only 3 spots. And it's like, I feel like we kind of scratch that and we're like, nobody's guaranteed a spot, right?
Yeah.
And so just going in with that attitude, and it's like, I did a lot of like intervals with her of these workouts, right? And I'm like, I know she's fit, or there were certain tests where I'm like, she could do really well, but I never wanted to let her know that necessarily, like, right? Because it's like,
I get that
what everyone else is doing, but I know she just lapped me on the, the run. Like, I'm like, I have to shave off like
this is an imam. How the hell did they get ahead of me?
Yeah, exactly. And so, there were definitely like certain workouts that I did alongside her where I'm like, oh, she's ready, But we never wanted her to get overly confident.
And the other side of that too is exactly what you're saying. She was putting up scores and times and paces that we were like, this is good, right? Like, but at the same time, it's like, this is the tough part with CrossFit. It doesn't necessarily matter if you're improving on where you were in sport. It matters if you are faster than everybody else on the field. Right? So we were like, these are fast times. How fast is everybody else? Like that kind of thing. Right?
So when you were designing that, you talked about like progressions and how you're going to set that in. Well, first of all, how many times did you guys do the actual workouts before you guys got her on the floor? Did you ever do the whole thing, like actually hit it?
I don't think one time.
Most of it's interval. Oh, wow. Most of it was interval stuff.
Okay.
We did like a variation of the snatch workout, but it wasn't necessarily like
wasn't exact,
but it was enough for us to know kind of like where she could land.
Yeah, now, and a big part of that is Hayley knowing herself. And being like, I'm not sure if. I mean, you've probably experienced this where, let's say you run a 5K or something like that, right? And you have a certain time and you're like, okay, I know that I can get this time. So then you start the next race and you're holding the same pace you did before, but suddenly it feels harder. Like it could actually like work against you. So what we tried to do was progressively overload her with different variations of intervals. Sometimes we would do like a couple rounds of the same thing, but even then we would throw little things in there. Like, I don't know if we want to give away all the
giveaway. How about this? I'll ask you questions. What I would look at this if I had 6 weeks is, no, I don't want to overdo the events over and over and over. I would like to have a general idea of what they would feel like, not necessarily run it all the way through. But what I would look at sometimes is I would look at what the stimulus I think is going to be, and then program things that may elicit the same feeling, the same stimulus, same intensity without actually having to repeat the same event 5 times.
100%. You want to talk a little bit about that? And not just that, we want to get that feeling, but we want to repeat that over and over and over and get her used to feeling that feeling more than she will actually feel it out on the floor, like for longer durations.
Yeah.
So that way, when the density comes and we have to put it all together, it's like, oh, it's only this many rounds, right? I've done way more than that.
Right,
Or
exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and a lot
Totally.
of what that does, right, is it strengthens your mind, right? And you're like, oh, I can do this. This is
Yeah.
This is nothing.
A lot of that stuff sounds good and looks good on paper when you're building it, but what happens when you have week 1 come out and times are being placed, and then you have week 2 that comes out and times are being placed? Did you guys have to modify what you were doing and being like, whoa, okay, these are faster or way slower than I thought? Or, hey, Haley, I really don't want you watching what everyone's doing because I don't want you to think about that time frame. Like, how did you guys handle that around that as time started coming in?
Do you want to talk a little bit
No,
about that?
I was going to say, she actually, Haley, she really wasn't glued too much to like the leaderboard and scoreboard. She really wasn't watching too much. Maybe there were a couple events where she kind of like checked in. But for the most part, she was pretty good about just not like letting that really like affect her or her training.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we were obviously glued to it and we were watching kind of like doing the math and just kind of like figuring out like, are we on pace? Like, where are we going to land here? And so.
Yeah. And to go along with what you're saying, the thing that makes that successful during that period of time was actually all the time that they spent together before those workouts were released. And even last year when we had been working in the off season, because when those workouts came out, we're looking at general, times that she's going to be, for example, like on the rower or on the bike or this and that. And we're like, well, we know what you can hold, and then from there, what we would do is be like watching the other regions. We'd be like, okay, they're finishing at this time, which means that the row pace is going to be this. The bike paces are probably going to be around here. We know you can hold that. So, if it makes sense, just hold this and don't overexert yourself because we know that you're fast on these other elements, So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that
good.
nerdy detail so much. So much. I'm a huge fan of like I loved going on week 3 because like waiting does not bother me, but what I loved was getting times. And then I was just like, all right, 12 to 13 minutes for this workout. How do I make this time slot work for me? How do I basically reverse engineer this so I know actually if I take a break here for 10 seconds on the front squats, I'll be fine if I can keep an even pace on the double unders. And so that was always a fun pace. So it's really cool to hear that. So when these 6 events got announced, was there any that jumped off the page where it's like, all right, this is the one where we need to really focus on nailing because, all right, this one might be great for you. This one is the one that just jumps off the paper. Were there any of those as far as, hey, we're going to kill this, or this is the one we have to look out for?
I was going to say, I think that there were 4 that we were like, okay, she could do pretty dang well.
Event 1,
event 3, and then 4, and then the last one, like we knew, like
we knew
wouldn't be an
she'd
issue.
be fine with that. Yeah.
The 2 that we knew we kind of needed work on was 2, and then the snatch one. And the snatch one, we have been putting in so much work on that, so that was really cool. I've done that test twice at competition. And
you did it at West Coast Classic, and then
and way back in whatever year that
was.
2016.
That is so funny. There's an old video of this, but like originally when she first did it, was it 2016, 2017, something like that?
No,
whatever. Like she didn't even get past the first bar, and she timed out after the first bar. So then at West Coast Classic, she finished it, and just that was such a fun moment of her finishing, and I'm just like losing my mind, like
it's really fun to like retest things, especially when there's such a huge gap between them. But so those were the 2. Like we knew, we'll talk more as we go event to event, but 2, and then the snatch one. Just like on the snatch one, we put so much work in, and it was more of like she just needs to execute it. Right. Versus like we knew she could do it, and like we knew she was getting pretty confident with the weights, which was really exciting. And so it was more about just threading the needle on that.
So like for event 1, like when that first came out, you and I looked at each other and we were like, this is a good one for her,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yep.
and I remember talking to Haley privately. I was like, as far as events go, for taking a year off and then your first event back into competition, I don't know if we could have picked a better event than this one for Haley Adams.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically, you know, she knew her paces extremely well. She knows her threshold really, really well. And we were just like, dude, go out there and do your thing. Like, this is going to be a fun one for you. Just have fun.
Yeah, that was a really cool one to open with. And man, that girl she can run.
You can run, no
Yeah,
doubt.
the other thing that Haley does well, sorry, Bill, is that I think people, right, they'll peg Haley as like, all right, she's not the strongest individual in the field. We know that. She knows that. But her endurance and her work capacity is, you know, top notch, if not some of the best in the world. But another thing she does well is she actually handles barbell cycling at high to moderate weights really well for Haley and against other athletes. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the weeds a little bit.
I think people look at the barbell and they just automatically counter out. But this was rough because it wasn't that heavy and it was a lot of running. But I was going to ask, like, you know, you guys been working on keeping her happy and in the game, and, you know, is she running? Does she do her races like this first event? Did she do it with blinders on and just kind of run it that way? Or was she really trying to get it to you? Or was like, I'm just going to see what I can do? Like, what was the game plan of her going in on that?
I mean, she knew her paces. Josh was out back in the warm-up area with her, and they kind of went over, like, you know, specifics and stuff. But I think for her, like, as this being her first one back, just making sure she was like soaking it all in and just like running her own race, right? Because what we didn't want to do was like put on all this pressure of like, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? Like, and just like kind of like, we all know she's very fit, right? That's no secret.
And I think also she's seasoned enough to know, like, okay, this is a good event for her. Like, you're gonna want to get your points here, right? Like, so we want to capitalize when it's the right time to capitalize. So we didn't necessarily say like, hey, try to keep up with Tia or with anybody, really. It was more like, just be competitive. You know, I think that's what we said beforehand. And I think she was just so fired up to get started. And what we really talked about for this one, and we had chatted about this before, is that the money rounds are actually really round 4. You know, like, people are going to go out way too hot. Don't run that race. Like, I want you to feel very comfortable through the second round. And yeah, it's kind of like that with a lot of these races. It's like, you know, you can chop off, like, usually the third portion, the third quarter is really where it's won or lost. And she executed that really well.
That was awesome.
You said how she was excited, and I can't imagine the emotions of everything that she's been going through in the setup. But again, to see her out there, which you guys said that you wanted to see, and that documentary is like, just to see her smile on the competition floor. Did you see that moment happen before the start when she's out there smiling? I don't know if she was looking for you guys or what, but seeing that happen after everything you guys have been working on and hoping for, what did that feel like to see that smile right before the event started?
I think when that happened, it's kind of like, okay, we did our job, you know, like we, you know, cause like for us, like we didn't go into this, like, we're not married to her being at a certain place, right? Like we just
like
wanted,
on the leaderboard.
Like on the leaderboard, right? Like we just want her to have a good time, right? I mean, like if you want to have a long career in CrossFit, like you really need to enjoy the process, like at your gym. You know, when you're training, you know, because when you get to these competitions, like it's such a privilege to be out on that floor. Like being under this kind of pressure is such a privilege. And so seeing that, like, it was already going to be a good weekend, right? Like just having that moment, I think already.
And something that, you know, I think Haley has also instilled, as well as the community at 460 and everything like that. It's just like, you know, it's like, you know, we did our job. It's like Haley did this for herself, you know, like she figured out something really cool. And when I look at that, I'm just like, there it is, you know, like it just really, it's a moment that I probably won't forget. Really, really happy for her and proud of that. So
Very cool, just with everything that led into that. But okay, so we go from event 1, we're like, all right, we're going to rock this. And then we go to event 2, where this one comes out on paper and you guys said, it's like, all right, we need to figure this one out. And what was the approach here, and then how it unfolded on the floor?
So we did lots of intervals on this. So I think a lot of people saw the front squats and they were like, oh, that's, if they were to just look at the leaderboard, right? They're like, oh, Hayley must have been front squats. It actually wasn't her front squats.
Really?
It was her double unders. Her front squats have gotten so much better. And we were like, in training, she was flying through this in intervals and stuff. But double unders, we have like a crooked arm thing going on. And what's crazy is I actually have the same issue. And when she told me that she had that,
when one of them is frozen and then the other one does all the spinning, is that
like, I don't even know.
There's a few other athletes that have run into this issue as well.
Such a weird phenomenon. I would see that in the gym. I'm like, what are you? Like, singles are fine, and as soon as we go to double unders, this one freezes, and then this one.
And interestingly enough, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so it happened to me too. So like years ago, I used to be great at them, and then one day my arms were crooked, and same thing with Hayley. I think she was great at them, and then one day her arm just went crooked, and so when this workout came out, we were like, oh, okay, it's a double under workout, and we knew to get it's
damage control.
I mean, it was damage control,
sure.
And when you do 500 double unders, with your and you're just you're working harder than you need to.
Exactly.
It's not a very comfortable thing to do. So we knew for us it was damage control, and that she just needed to get through this. And this is also something we've been working on, right?
Yeah. And I think it's so earlier in the season, we're like, okay, they're in the open, cool. They might show up at quarterfinals, but you can get through them and stuff. And a lot of time previous to that was spent, practicing a lot of the other new double under stuff that's come out, like crossover singles, crossover doubles, acquiring those skills. And so we're like, okay, they're in quarterfinals, cool. I don't. And then here comes 500 double unders again at semifinals, and we're like, okay, here we go. So we knew this was going to be a damage control workout, and so we were hoping for like a middle placement. And then we'd be like, all right, we're still set up for success. And so she finishes this workout, and we go backstage or backstage was backstage.
Yeah, I guess we could call it that.
We're so used to the arena and it being backstage. So anyway,
it was
behind the curtain is
and I remember being like, kind of like refreshing the leaderboard, and then I saw her placement, and I was like, okay, that's pretty low.
Well, okay, so what's the conversation after a 35th place finish coming off the second?
So it's a lot more. It's a lot for me, and this is just my approach. It could be different for different coaches. It's a lot more of first I need to listen, and go to my athlete and be like, how are we doing? How you feeling? Where are we at? And then just kind of gauging where her headspace is at, and then kind of going from there. She came off. She knew what it was like, as far as not her best placement. And so we were just talking about it, and she kind of debriefed me a little bit and how she felt and everything. I'm like, okay. And so I'm scrolling through the leaderboard and I'm like, okay. And she's like, where am I at? And I go, do you want to know? And then she said, yeah. And I told her the placement, and I can't remember where it put her. I want to say it was like,
I think it was 14th.
14th, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not lying. I go, this was your placement on the workout. She goes, where does that put me? I go, 14th. And she goes, oh, okay. And I was like, all right. And she goes, okay, that's not bad. I go, yeah. And she goes, and this is word for word. She's like, looks like I'm going to have to drop the hammer on the next one. And
dang.
I was like,
all right.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I wanted to like run through a brick wall after that. I was like, there she is, right there, dude.
When that happened, I mean, like, that to me right there shows so much growth.
Yeah.
Like being able to take, because when you're winning and you're on top of the world and everything's great.
Yeah, it's great. Easy.
When she responded like that,
dude.
I mean, like, come on, like that shows so much growth to be like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ham on this next one. And sure enough.
Yeah. And she had told both of us previously that, like, you know, in the past, if I had had a placement like that, that would have affected me much differently, you know? But yeah, like you said, just that both, I think the confidence in herself, and then also just having a different approach to competing in general, was just like, okay, it's go time. Let's do this, you know?
All right, the next one being the legless rope climb, assault bike. And for that, was it more of like, I mean, you knew what she was capable of coming in with the training that you'd be doing, where you're like, I'm so glad we have this attitude coupled with this event coming up to close out Saturday.
Yeah. So we actually we did a lot of interval training on this one, and her splits,
dude,
we were like, okay.
We kept reducing the rest and being okay, she can hold this.
Yeah. So this one we knew, like, if she executes it like she did in training, and she knew too, all I have to do what I did in training? And we're like, yes. And she did just that.
Yeah.
And she was like, I felt great. Like,
yeah. And then also, you know, there's a couple moments throughout the weekend where some of her training, you know, there was in the off season and stuff, there's a little more emphasis on bodybuilding as well. And just doing hypertrophy and stuff, and just putting on a little extra muscle for some strength. And, you know, her arms felt great the whole time. Her legs had a little extra juice for each, you know, stroke of the pedal. And she was able to hold all of her splits. And I mean, she was just consistent from top to bottom.
Yeah, it was so cool that, you know, like, obviously event 1, and then we had the bad one, and then another good event. So kind of like smushed it, you know, we're done with that one. But yeah, it was really cool to see her.
Right? Second, third, fifth, second.
Yeah.
She dropped the hammer.
Yeah, she certainly dropped the hammer.
When you talk about hypertrophy training, whether it's arms, legs, however you want to put it, it's interesting that you bring that up, because of the way hypertrophy training works. It elicits some of that muscular local fatigue failure things that you move through. And it's not necessarily we're trying to strengthen you in this state, but it's almost we're trying to get you used to this state and understand that you can still move through this state. Do you see a bit of both? Is it more strength, or is it just more stimulus?
It's kind of both, actually. So it depends on the test. You know, if you're putting on muscle using hypertrophy and stuff, you're going to be a stronger person, like a bigger person, and it'll help you with, you know, the heavier loads and all that stuff, and being able to move those easily. However, just like you just touched on, a lot of times in CrossFit, there will be limiters placed there intentionally to create separation. And, you know, so if you can focus in on what some of those limiters are, you can hone in on specific muscle groups to mitigate local muscle fatigue. So that's also part of it. And so, for example, let's say you were wanting to get better at hitting more muscle ups in a row, right? It would probably help you to do more tricep work, you know, because if the thing that gasses you out is, you know, I hit 12 to 15 reps and then I can't get out of the dip, it's like, all right, well, your triceps are probably blown out, and you can keep kipping all you want, and your pull might feel great, but you're going to stop, you know, that kind of thing. But if you're used to doing sets of 10, 20, 30 unbroken at a tempo, controlled repetitions with the tricep, your muscle's already conditioned for that. So,
then also the fact that, like, a legless rope climb is a really isolated muscle movement. I mean, there's not a whole lot of pieces that you get to put into that. So if you're doing hypertrophy, is usually single muscle work that you're working to fatigue, you know, and so that really lends itself to this one really nice.
Yeah. On top of that, she's just phenomenal at rope climbs also.
True.
Like her every rope climb looks like the same. You know, she's like clockwork with that. So yeah.
Well, then once you go to that, now you look at the bike, and you said the interval training that he did is like, hey, the bike pace you do in training is going to be fine, because we know on average the top 3 times in the world, the women were taking this amount of time on the bike. Is that how much detail you guys get into that? And be like, hey, do you guys go RPMs, watts?
I think we do. It depends on the test. It depends on the test. But yeah, like as far as holding paces, we usually look at RPMs. Yeah. It's like hold this RPM. You know, that should get you off around this time. And that's really all you need to do for this test. You know, you don't have to go further than that, you know? Okay. So.
Well, I mean, a great way to end out day 2. Now Haley, you've been competing at regionals for a very long time, and it's typically 2-2-2. 2 events, day 1, day 2, day 3. For the first time ever, we had a 1-2, and then we had half of the events left on the final day of competition. She gets second, 35th, ends on a second. What was that Saturday night like going into Sunday, knowing you were just halfway there?
Yeah, it's honestly, I don't think it really affected anything, right? It's just kind of like that's what they dealt and that's what we're going to deal with. I kind of liked it, you know,
I
because
loved it.
yeah, I thought
me
it was
too,
really
yeah.
cool.
I thought
I
it
thought
was
the way that everything kind of like worked itself out over the weekend, I like really liked it from like just a spectator standpoint. But yeah, we knew that we were only halfway through and that, you know, everything's, you know, this is where we're at, but we still have a lot to, a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people can go into Sunday either being like, well, I'm already out, or oh, I kind of already got this locked up. There's only 2 events left and I'll be fresh tomorrow. There was also a sense of like, okay, we got a lot of this to go, you know? So
and a couple of tests too, where I felt like, I mean, a lot could shift real quick.
A lot can happen. Like, for example, if you start failing the final bar on snatches, a lot can change. And then the next workout, you have one where they're intentionally blowing out your forearms.
So great.
And so, like, what happens if you just blow up and you can't pick up the dumbbells? Like, so there's a lot of room for shakeups there.
Yeah.
Well, and then to start things off, we start with the row handstand walk. And after 2 weeks, we're like, oh, okay, this is a both workout, but we need to be able to sustain a pretty strong row pace from start to finish, not necessarily go out hard, but that 800 just staring everybody in the face in the third row part of this event. But also is like, there isn't room for error on the handstand walk because the 5 seconds you lose, you do not want to try to make that up on a 600-meter row.
No, you do not.
Was this the most stressful one of the weekend, or was it the snatch one?
This was the one I was super excited for.
Yeah.
Like, I thought she would do really well. I was like, she might be able to win this in my head, you know, and the reason I thought that is, one, Hayley and I had been doing many, just row repeats throughout this
500s, just
a lot of 500s,
over
really uncomfortable stuff on the rower, you know? So I knew there had been a lot of good work put in there. And then I kind of ran through some intervals with her on this one. And this one is one I would be excited for. And when I did it with Hayley, you know, I was keeping up with her on the row. That girl was like running on her hands. And
she's so
that's
good.
the moment where I was like, she could win this one, you know, and I didn't tell her that, but I was like,
and
this is good.
The really cool part about that workout is if you look at how some of the other athletes did really well. And this is where I feel like Voltron came together with everybody, like, you knowing rowing paces really well, Hayley knowing herself very well, and then, like, you know, just kind of like picking apart the actual test and what the results were from other regions. Certain athletes, I can't remember which one, so you have to forgive me. I want to say maybe Laura Horvath. She's fast on her hands, but she made up a lot of speed on the rower. Like, she's very powerful.
She's rowing like a 148.
Yeah.
So so you would think, oh, I have to run a row 148, you know? And we saw that a couple times where people would be rowing at pretty quick paces, and they just weren't quite as fast on the handstand walk. And we knew Hayley was very fast on her hands. So we were like, what is the right pace? And so we kind of used numbers, and we took a bunch of top scores and created an average. And we were like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I was like, could you hold, I think it was like 152. I was like, could you hold 152 for this whole thing? She's like, yeah. And we were like, okay, cool. Here's the plan. Hold 152 for the whole thing. If you feel good on the 800, peel off a second or two, you know, that kind of thing. I just see where you're at. You're just at that point, you're in a race, you know, you finish the race. And so I think she went 152, 151, 150-ish on the second row. And then on the third one, she was around like 151, and then at times going below 150 because she, you know, the roar of the crowd, she's getting fired up and everything like that. And then we also really stressed too, just transitions, like, don't get a no rep, go straight. One of the longest transitions in CrossFit, especially if you're doing calories, is going from any implement to the rower and getting your first calorie. So we were like, get the handle moving ASAP.
go.
You know, like like whatever it takes, get that thing started. And she executed it flawlessly. And
Yeah, that was really fun. He was behind her rower, Josh was, and then I was at the end in her lane, and it was just like so cool to see that. And to be like so close up, you know, because we knew what was possible, and to just watch her execute that was freaking so great.
It was great. And you know, I'm sure you guys can nerd out on that. Like, you know, as coaches, like when they're in the race and you can see the monitor, you're like, you're doing it, you're holding it. Awesome, you know. So,
it's worse when I think it's worse when it's way lower. You know,
yeah,
you're like, no, like I'd rather be 4 seconds slower. I'm like, all right, they're running, they're not feeling it. Okay, we'll make it up. You see like 147, you're like,
slow down. Stop. What are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that went fantastic.
Yeah, she got first place, so I would say it went pretty good.
It went pretty well.
Pretty great.
And that brings us to the snatch ladder.
Snatch ladder. Okay,
so go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, wait,
I had two things come out on paper when I was looking at this for Haley, and one was event 2 and the other was event 5.
Right.
After event 2 with 35th, I was like, man, like you can't have another one of those.
Mhm.
I don't think it'd be a bottom 5, but I was not expecting a top 10 finish in the snatch ladder. You guys are smiling. It's like we did.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, so here's the thing. We've been working. So when we first started working with Haley, she had taken some time off, and we kind of met her where she was at, right?
Yeah.
And so we weren't lifting like crazy numbers, you know, when we first connected with her. And I think we just had her on the right progression. And then as we got closer, you know, her confidence started to get like just her confidence was going up with these weights. You know, and we did lots of work on this.
Yeah.
You can.
Oh yeah.
Like,
So, you know, starting from last year, like we're big believers in just traditional linear progression. Take your time to build your strength, all that stuff. Start low and make sure things are looking good and everything like that. And thankfully she trusted us and did it. You know, she did all the work and put all the time in. And you know, so when it came to this event specifically, we had seen what she'd done in practice, and more than anything, kind of touching on what you said, Chase, is that she's very consistent. So, you know, we knew that she could lift these weights, and you know, we were basically not pushing past that as far as like lifting crazy heavy weights, like
right.
like leading up to it. Once we knew what the test was, we were like, we just want you to be so comfortable with like 155, 165. You know, like you're like we're gonna be so like if you fail it, you know you're gonna pick it up and hit it, you know, that kind of thing. And then on game day, we had talked before.
Yeah, I actually I was big thing on this was on the first bar. I was like, you got to make sure you squat low enough, like get no reps there, right? Because I did see a lot of that happening in the previous weeks. A lot of judges were calling no reps on the first bar, and so just making sure she was like hitting good reps, staying in her lane, especially on this workout, and making sure she did not lift that bar until she was ready. And when she hit all of her 165, she got to the 175 bar. She hits the first one. We were like, yes. She picked up the second one so fast, like, and just hits it. I think she just took a chance.
And we were like, almost like, is this too soon? You know,
and it was really cool. And that's like, right. Like that's why she's Haley Adams, right?
Yeah,
it's
she's a fighter. She's a competitor,
she was like, I'm going to go for it. And it paid off. Because what I will say is I did see Jason Hopper try to do a little bit of that with Roman, and it didn't. Yes. But in sports, it's like, you want to see that. You want to see people taking chances because sometimes it pays off. Yeah. So, that was one of my favorite. That one and the rowing one, I was just so
Rogue like, this is
this is probably that one is the one I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Because I know how much work went into it, and to just see it executed, have no misses, you know, and to obviously see where she finished on that.
And to trust herself, you know, like we were like, people are going to make mistakes. People are going to, and by the way, some people are going to finish this really fast. None of it matters. Like all that matters is you doing what you know you can do. And She went out there, and that final one, she fought for that last rep, and
It was cool.
that was probably the one I was like the event I freaked out the most. Like when she hit the last snatch, I was like shaking people next to me, like, let's go, you know. So yeah, we're really happy about it.
No, that was fantastic. And the thing with Hayley in that event is it wasn't a matter of like, oh, is she going to get through this? And Hayley, you had talked about this as well. It's like, what are other people going to do with this workout?
Right.
How are other people going to perform? Because she could go the fastest she possibly could.
Yeah.
And we have no idea how everyone else is going to handle it.
100%.
Which is, that was fantastic. Like, to me, that was when I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
Like, this is different. This is different. And then we come to the final where she's in a good position. What's the conversation going into the final event with Hayley in a qualifying spot, somewhat comfortable, but knowing we've watched 2 weeks of a lot of people were comfortable and then they were very uncomfortable at the end of the weekend because they were not going to the CrossFit Games because of how this thing was programmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, she was in a very good spot, and we knew like what she could do on this workout
from practice, right?
From practice, and I just think, just kind of like knowing that she could stick to her own plan from practice versus like kind of having to pull a Travis Mayer and just kind of like, well, I have no choice but
I gotta send it,
go unbroken and send it. So it's nice knowing that you're going into the final, you're in a comfortable position. You know, you'll do well if you just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And I think she just did exactly what she needed to do. Like she knew she could use her plan that she wanted, that she was comfortable with, and not have that like outside noise being like, well, if I don't do this or don't do that, I won't go to the game. So that was really nice.
I think the I can't remember the exact time, but once we watched the European women go, and they all got off at about the same time, and we saw some stellar scores from that region. And I think we were like, I think it was 70 RPMs. We're like, don't need to go any faster than that. You know, like, especially when people are failing on the dumbbells, it's just like, why kill yourself for an extra 5 seconds?
That's
the advice. No point there. So that was kind of like a buy-in. And then on the muscle ups, she had a set. Do you remember what the splits were?
I don't remember her like what her sets were.
Yeah, she was very confident.
Yeah,
with
it was 11 and 4.
Yeah, 11-4. There you go.
Yeah, because we talked about that. I was like, yeah, I think if I was feeling real good, I would try for 11. But she's like, I like those numbers. So she did just that, and it's funny too because we had been training on different kinds of straps, and so she would do like she did like 5, and I was like, is she coming down? Like because the backswing was so much different. And cadence was different. And I was like, oh no, she's still going, you know, and she did exactly what she was gonna do from training. So that was really cool.
And I think there was, I can't remember where the planned split was for the lunges, but that was planned also to where it's like, especially just knowing like some people are going to have to go all out on this and they're going to make mistakes. So because
there was a lot of epic fails, man.
Yeah,
so many on that race,
and that was our hope for the weekend. Is like we want to get to this event and be able to play defense versus offense. You know, so thankfully she was in that position. She was able to do that, secure a good spot for the last event, and qualified for the CrossFit Games.
Man,
so crazy.
That's so great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're happy about it.
Yeah, we're excited.
Go ahead, Bill.
As we go into the games, I think we've been in this sport a long time, and we've seen Hayley from way back when to now, and there's obviously been these big jumps. Has there been a jump from before semis, now after semis, going into the games? Whether it's headspace wise or maturity wise, or I mean, obviously we've seen strength increases and that kind of thing, but like as far as a competitor goes, like what was the jump going from before semis to now after semis?
Fired up, like I would say that would you agree with that? Like,
yeah, I think I think she went to Disney World for like a week. Of
course.
And then she's fired up. She's excited.
Yeah. And I think it's different because this time it feels like, in the past there was she put an expectation on herself or other people, whatever it was, of like, where's she gonna place? Like, is she gonna improve on that, this and that? And like this year, she's like, I made the games. I'm excited. It's in Texas. This is gonna be so much fun. And I think it's more of like being eager to step out on the floor to just enjoy that moment, you know.
And
So
to just give her full effort, right? Like, and just do what she can. And I think if we can keep her in that headspace, it'll be good.
And we try to reinforce that too, to where we're like, you know, when she has a good event or anything like that, or when she's in a dead heat with Tia on the running event or anything like that, we're just like, isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that fun? Like, don't you love that? And she's like, yeah, you know, like, and so, cool. Yeah,
that's very cool. And I think for Hayley is that years past, it was fear and frustration almost going into the games every year. And now you're saying it's fun. It's like she's fired up, she's excited, and you can enjoy the opportunities that she has while she has them, and 100%. To make the most of them versus not enjoy any second, even if it's with success.
At
the games level. So
100%.
That's fantastic, guys. And listen, thank y'all so much. If y'all are watching now, by the way, thank you for everybody that's watching. We shifted this thing around more than like a street. Car, or what's the little cup game?
The shell game.
So thank you for your flexibility. And it's like, oh, this happened and that, and then we can't and this, and so it's,
well, we're excited. Are you both going to be there?
It's in my backyard, so I'll be there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hoping
we're looking at you, Bill.
We're hoping.
Okay, cool, man. Well, hopefully we look forward to seeing you guys there.
Yes, we're starting a petition to get Bill Grun there. We love petitions on this show. It's our favorite.
Oh, by the way, for any of you guys that are watching this right now, if you guys could just go ahead and subscribe right now.
Oh, yeah, you're the king of
You got to do it. I mean, look, if you're enjoying the show, like, give these guys a little support. Hit like.
A like goes a long way.
Leave a comment. It all helps them out in the long run. So there you go.
I appreciate
good
you guys.
Man.
Well, listen, y'all, thank you. Thank you for your time. Congratulations for this, how things have shaken out. I'm excited to see what happens coming up in August. And then Hayley, you particularly, good luck in your CrossFit Games journey as well. So it's absolutely fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate having us on.
Thank you guys very much. We'll be back. What, Bill? Monday night.
Monday night's
the plan. We are grading the rookie classes of the CrossFit Games for the last 16 years. Which rookie class is the best class ever?
Ooh, I like that. That's
We're
great.
starting. Yep, we'll start with the women. I've done all the work. Barkley Dale doing the math. The amount of time I've spent on this project. We don't have.
That's why we love you guys. We love that you're just as big a nerds as we are about this stuff. So, yeah,
it's there are going to be some really cool things that we will debate on of which is better, and some of these are years apart. Like, there's cool things that I've stumbled upon. So we'll do the women first. That'll be Monday night, and probably next week we'll do the men. But Hayley, Josh, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank y'all for joining the show. And happy 4th of July. God bless America.
Happy 4th, guys.
God bless America.